It was 2:17 a.m. when the silence of Sycamore Ridge was pierced, not by screams or sirens, but by the sound of front doors creaking open in eerie unison. 18 homes scattered across the peaceful cul-de-sac saw their children rise from their beds as if called by some silent, invisible force. 17 little bodies, pajama-clad and barefoot, moved with surreal synchronicity. Like somnambulant shadows in the moonlight, they opened their doors and stepped into the night. Their eyes were open, but glazed over. Their arms extended out like tiny wings. They moved with purpose, but not their own. No one saw them leave. Not then. Not yet. At 6:13 a.m., Donna Myers stumbled into her daughter's empty bedroom to wake her for school and found the bed cold, the blanket peeled back like someone had gotten up hours ago. Panic hadn't hit yet. Not really. Maybe she was in the bathroom. Maybe downstairs watching cartoons too early. Donna's footsteps thundered down the staircase, her voice echoing. "Leah. Honey." But the silence in the house was unnerving. By 6:30, 2 more parents on Elmwood Drive were calling the police. Then 2 more on Birch Lane. By 7:15, 17 houses were in chaos. Sirens began to wail. But not for Alex Walker. Justine Gandy sat at her kitchen table, bleary-eyed and hunched over her second cup of coffee. Her phone buzzed again. Another text. This one from Principal Harris. "Emergency staff meeting. Get here ASAP. Something's happened with your class." The words made her stomach turn. Justine was a woman who thrived on routine, third-grade lesson plans color-coded by week, behavioral charts on her wall, vocabulary words posted in neat cursive across her blackboard. Children loved her because she was kind. Parents respected her because she was structured. But nothing in her 22 years of teaching had prepared her for this. By 8:04 a.m. she stood in the staff lounge of Sycamore Elementary, surrounded by a swarm of shell-shocked administrators and officers. Principal Harris's face was pale, his jaw clenched. "They're all gone," he said flatly. 17 of your students. All vanished last night. At the exact same time. Gasps rippled through the room. Justine's voice cracked. "What do you mean, gone? Like, ran away?" "No. Not exactly," Detective Mendez said, stepping forward, his face drawn with sleepless eyes. Each child left their home around 2:17 a.m., according to video footage from doorbell cams and street surveillance. They just walked out. No signs of struggle. No forced entry. No sound. Walked where? We don't know. That's the problem. They disappeared after a few blocks. All of them. The room fell silent. Justine's throat tightened. Wait, all of them? Every single one? Mendez hesitated. No. There was one who stayed behind. Alex Walker sat alone at his desk in room 3B, the bright morning light feeling foreign as it filtered through the blinds. His eyes were red. Not from crying. He hadn't cried at all, but from being questioned over and over again. Teachers. Police. His parents, whose faces looked like cracked porcelain. 17 empty desks surrounded him like gravestones. Backpacks hung untouched on the hooks along the wall. The classroom felt haunted. It was too quiet, like it was holding its breath. Justine gently entered the room. "Hi, Alex," she said softly, kneeling beside him. He looked at her, blinking slowly. His voice was quiet and hollow. "Why did they leave me?" The words pierced her chest like ice. Justine paused. "What do you mean?" "I saw them," he said. Her breath caught. "What did you see?" Alex didn't answer. He turned his head and stared out the window. His small hands were folded tightly in his lap. "They were flying," he said finally. "All of them. Like airplanes." arms out. And their eyes were wrong. Later that afternoon, the town of Sycamore Ridge boiled into a panic stew of rage and disbelief. Social media was ablaze with speculation. Cult abductions. Mass hypnosis. Alien encounters. Nothing made sense. In the school office, Justine sat with a sketchpad, drawing a map of her classroom. She couldn't explain why. She just needed to see it. 17 desks. One left behind. She circled each name. Leah Myers. Jacob Rivera. Emily Sung. Thomas Greer. Nia Wells. On and on. Then there was Alex Walker. The lone survivor. She stared at the map for a long time, then flipped to a fresh page. She remembered something odd about the last week before this happened. She recalled the children becoming quiet. Strange. Distracted. Their artwork had started to shift in theme. Gone were the happy family drawings. Now it was scribbled black skies. Thin figures with long limbs. Houses burning in the distance. A forest, drawn in charcoal gray pencil, stretching into the unknown. Always in the center, a crooked tower, leaning like it had bones. She had told herself it was just a phase. Kids get weird sometimes. But now she wasn't so sure. That night, the town locked up tight. Parents nailed shut bedroom windows. Police patrolled the blocks in rotating shifts. Helicopters scanned the area with infrared. It was like wartime, but no one knew who the enemy was. Justine couldn't sleep. She kept replaying Alex's voice in her mind. They were flying. Their eyes were wrong. Why did they leave me? She opened her laptop and logged into the school's online assignment portal. She clicked through the weekly homework submissions, desperate for something, anything, that stood out. 17 students. 17 digital submissions. But one caught her eye. It was Emily Sung's journal entry from last Thursday. The topic was, "What I Dreamed Last Night." Most kids wrote about Disney characters or imaginary pets. But Emily wrote, "Last night, I dreamed about the Whisper Man. He came to our windows and said our names. He said we were chosen. We had to go to the tower soon. He said we would fly." Justine stared, her blood turning to ice. She clicked Jacob's entry. "I heard him again. The Whisper Man. He sounds like my dad, but it's not him. He says we'll leave soon. He says we don't belong here. And Nia's. He comes at 2:17. That's the time. He knocks with his fingers. Long fingers. I tried not to look out the window but I did. Now he says I'm his." Justine sat frozen. She realized, slowly, that they had been warning her. Weeks in advance. All the signs were there. And she had missed them. At 2:17 a.m., her phone buzzed. She jolted upright. A text. From an unknown number. "Why didn't you listen?" She gasped. The phone buzzed again. "He's not done." Then a final message. "He only left one behind to bring the rest." There was something strange about how Alex Walker sat in the back seat of his mother's car that morning. He didn't slouch like a tired third grader. He didn't play with the hem of his sleeve or swing his legs like he used to. He sat stiff, silent, and still, staring forward with both hands placed neatly on his knees. "Sweetheart," his mother, Denise, said as she drove through Sycamore Ridge, her voice trembling behind the brittle mask of calm, "are you feeling okay today?" Alex didn't respond at first. His head tilted slightly toward the window, watching a murder of crows flapping erratically across the cloudy sky like they were trying to escape something above them. "I feel heavy," he said finally. Denise frowned. "Heavy? Like I'm full of static." She tightened her grip on the steering wheel. He turned his head slowly and looked at her. Mom. Yes, honey. I don't think I'm the same boy anymore. In room 3B, Justine Gandy sat alone at her desk before the bell rang, a cold cup of coffee between her palms and Emily Sung's journal page spread out in front of her. The Whisper Man comes at 2:17. The time was repeated over and over again. Not 2:15. Not 2:30. Always 2:17 a.m. That precision unnerved her. She had printed several of the children's journal entries, laying them out like clues in a crime novel. The same phrases repeated. The Whisper Man. The tower. Flying. Long fingers. 2:17. But most disturbing was the tone, casual, like they were describing a field trip or a school play. She turned toward the window and stared across the empty playground, where the swings creaked softly in the wind. The rusted chains groaned like bones. Something shifted inside her. A feeling. A memory. She didn't remember falling asleep last night. She remembered reading the entries, yes. Remembered crying. And then. Blackness. Then the texts. Her fingers trembled as she pulled out her phone again. The messages were still there. Why didn't you listen? He's not done. He only left one behind to bring the rest. Her gut churned. Her classroom door opened. Alex Walker entered quietly, wearing the same navy blue hoodie from yesterday. He looked well-rested, almost too well-rested. His skin was a little too pale, his hair a little too neat. He didn't meet her eyes as he sat in his desk. Justine watched him for a long moment. Then she said softly, "Alex, can I ask you something?" He nodded. "When you said you saw the other kids leave, and they were flying, what did you mean?" Alex looked down at his desk. "I didn't say they were flying," he said. "Yes, you did. Yesterday." "No. I said they were going to fly." "That's what he said." Justine's pulse skipped. "He. The Whisper Man," Alex whispered. "He talks to me now." A deep silence settled between them. Then he smiled, small and cold. "He says I'm his anchor." Later that day, while the town spiraled deeper into hysteria, Denise Walker sat in her SUV. Outside Dr. Lively's child psychiatry office, wringing her hands. Alex was inside, calmly drawing with crayons on butcher paper while the therapist observed him from behind a two-way mirror. "You said he's not showing signs of trauma?" Denise asked, disbelief in her voice. Dr. Lively folded his arms. "None. His vitals are perfect. No anxiety spikes. No withdrawal symptoms. It's eerie, honestly. Kids with PTSD usually show something. But Alex? He's like a stone in still water." Denise blinked, tears rising in her eyes. He watched his entire class vanish. His friends. And he's just, fine. He drew something today, the doctor added, gesturing to the paper. Denise walked to the observation window and looked. Alex had drawn a massive black structure stretching across the paper. A crooked tower, like something out of a fever dream. Tall, angular, and covered in strange symbols, spirals, eyes, and crooked stick figures surrounding its base like worshippers. There were 17 figures. All with their arms outstretched. And standing in front of the tower, was a single small boy, holding a key. That evening, Justine visited the Walkers. She had told herself it was just a check-in. But she brought the journal pages with her, and a copy of the drawing Alex had made. Denise welcomed her in, her eyes ringed with worry. "Has Alex said anything else?" Justine asked after some small talk. Denise hesitated. "He talks in his sleep now. In whispers. Like he's having a conversation." "Did you record it?" Denise nodded and pulled out her phone. Last night's. Around 2:17 again. She pressed play. At first, it was just static. Then a voice, barely audible. Definitely Alex's. But it didn't sound like Alex. It was wrong, hollow and flat. He is coming. I will open the door. I have the key now. The others are waiting. They're almost ready. And then another voice, deeper, inhuman, rasping like wine through a broken flute. One more, then the tower wakes. Justine staggered back in her seat, nearly dropping the phone. What does it mean? Denise asked, her voice shaking. Justine didn't have an answer. But she was beginning to understand something horrifying. Alex wasn't just spared. He was chosen. That night, Justine set an alarm. 2:15 a.m. She sat on her couch, bathed in TV light, heart hammering in her chest. Her windows were locked. Curtains drawn. Every door bolted. At 2:17, the house went dead. Lights flickered and dimmed. The TV turned to static. And then, a knock. Soft. Rhythmic. Knuckles on glass. Coming from the inside of her living room window. She froze. The knock came again. 3 taps. Then silence. She crept toward the curtain and pulled it back slowly. Nothing. But when she turned, Alex was standing in her hallway. "Hi, Miss Gandy," he said, smiling too wide. Her throat closed. "You shouldn't be here," she said, backing away. "I never left," he replied. She blinked. He was gone. Her alarm buzzed violently, 2:18 a.m. She gasped and opened her eyes. She was on the floor. Had she blacked out? Sweating and shaking, she scrambled to her phone. No missed calls. No texts. No signs anyone had entered the house. But her back door was unlocked. The next morning, the town learned that another child had gone missing. Megan Langford, age 9. Not part of Justine's class. But her younger sister had been. Another knock at 2:17. Another child vanished without a trace. The pattern was spreading. Alex arrived at school with something new, a bruise on his neck, shaped like a hand. His mother hadn't noticed it. He said nothing. In class, he spoke suddenly during silent reading. "Miss Gandy, can I tell you a secret?" Justine looked up slowly. He smiled. They were only the first. "First what?" she asked, voice trembling. He leaned closer. "The first sacrifices." They found Leah Myers standing barefoot in the middle of a soybean field 20 miles outside Sycamore Ridge. It was just past dawn. A farmer named Mark Dilley had been inspecting irrigation lines when he saw what he first mistook for a scarecrow. As he got closer, he realized it was a child, arms outstretched like wings, staring straight into the rising sun, her body caked in dirt, hair tangled with brambles and dead leaves. Her mouth was open. Not speaking. Just, open. Wide. Frozen in a silent scream. He called the sheriff's department, panicked, certain she was dead. But when the deputies arrived, she was still standing. Still breathing. Still, staring. By noon, the news had spread like wildfire, one of the 17 had returned. The town held its breath. Parents crowded outside Sycamore Memorial Hospital, desperate for details. Reporters swarmed the police station. Some residents wept openly in the streets. Others locked their doors and unplugged their TVs, muttering about omens and signs, and how this was not salvation, only a warning. Justine Gandy sat in her car in the hospital parking lot, watching the entrance through her windshield, knuckles white against the steering wheel. She had to see Leah. Had to know what had come back. Inside the pediatric ICU, Leah lay motionless in a white gown, her body washed and swaddled in clean linens. She didn't blink. Didn't speak. Her skin was cold to the touch, her pupils dilated far beyond normal. Her hands trembled intermittently, like she was reaching for something just beyond her grasp. Her mother sat at her bedside, holding one of those twitching hands, murmuring prayers with a look of horror-stricken hope. Dr. Winslow turned to Justine in the hallway. Her vitals are stable, but there are anomalies, he said quietly. Anomalies? Justine repeated. She doesn't respond to voices. Her brain scans show activity, but not in the usual regions. It's like her brain is awake, but not conscious. She's locked in some kind of internal state. Justine stared through the glass. She's not really back, is she? She whispered. Dr. Winslow didn't answer. Instead, he handed her a small plastic evidence bag. She had this clenched in her left hand when they found her. Inside the bag was a slip of notebook paper, soggy, torn, and smudged. But the writing was still legible. A child's handwriting. 2:17. Tower rising. More will fly. The door is open. The anchor is breaking. Justine's breath caught in her throat. Her eyes darted back to Leah. Then to the bag. Then to the hallway mirror across from them, where her reflection stared back, pale, haggard, shaking. Something inside her whispered. You should have listened sooner. Meanwhile, in room 3B, Alex Walker sat alone again. The school had decided to keep him enrolled. Partly because Denise insisted on normalcy, partly because the town couldn't face the implication that the last remaining child of the cursed classroom was too dangerous to be near others. They treated him like glass. But he was no longer fragile. He was watching. That morning, the lights in room 3B flickered. Justine walked in after returning from the hospital and found Alex humming quietly, his head tilted to the side like he was listening to something only he could hear. Alex, she said gently, do you remember Leah? He stopped humming and looked up. Yes. She came back last night. A beat of silence. Then he smiled. She's not supposed to. Justine blinked. What? She disobeyed, he said calmly. She was told to stay in the between. Justine's voice turned cold. The between what? He tilted his head again. Between the tower and the eye. She stepped closer, her voice trembling. Alex, who is the whisper man? Alex looked up at her with eyes that were too calm, too knowing. He's the one who remembered us when everyone else forgot. A chill rolled through her spine. I don't understand, she whispered. You don't have to, Alex said, voice flattening. You're not part of the story anymore. Not since you stopped listening. That night, Justine couldn't sleep. Her dreams were violent collages of twisted limbs, spiraling towers, children with sewn-shut mouths walking into burning forests. She jolted awake at 2:16 a.m. and sat upright in bed. Frozen. Waiting. Exactly 1 minute later, the sound came. 3 knocks. From her bedroom door. But it wasn't locked. And she lived alone. She stared at the door, heart thudding in her chest, skin slick with sweat. Miss Gandy. A whisper. A voice on the other side of the door. High-pitched, childlike. Can I come in now? The knob twisted slightly. She screamed and lunged out of bed, grabbing the nearest object, a lamp, and smashing it against the door just as it creaked inward. The hallway beyond was empty. No child. No sound. But carved into the door with deep, jagged marks were 5 letters. ALEX. The next morning, the second child returned. Jacob Rivera. Found crawling out of the woods near Route 5, completely naked, shivering, muttering the same phrase over and over. The tower is breathing, the tower is breathing, the tower is breathing. He had cuts on his legs, small, circular, too evenly spaced to be random. Almost like someone had placed them there. Intentionally. At the hospital, Jacob wouldn't eat. Wouldn't drink. Just stared at his reflection and cried, begging for it to stop looking at him. When Justine visited him, he lashed out, screaming at her in a guttural voice that was not his own. "You don't belong here." Security had to sedate him. Back in her car, Justine sobbed until her voice broke. Something was returning these children. But not as a gift. As a warning. That afternoon, Justine confronted Denise Walker outside the school. "He's not your son anymore," she whispered, desperate, trembling. Denise's face crumpled. "I know." The words hit Justine like a hammer. "I wake up at night and I see him standing at the foot of the bed. Smiling. He just stands there. Doesn't say a word." She looked away, eyes welling. "And last night, I found drawings on the inside of the kitchen cabinets. In chalk. Like he'd crawled in there. All spirals. Eyes. That tower." Justine swallowed hard. "Why aren't you getting help?" "I did. I brought in a priest yesterday." "What happened?" Denise shook her head, eyes wide. "He took one look at Alex and ran." That night, Justine stayed awake again, journal pages pinned to her wall, red strings connecting names, symbols, dates. It all pointed to one thing, the tower. But what was it? And why was Alex, this quiet, once shy boy, the center of it all? She scanned through local history. Urban legends. Mythology. And then she found something. A brief, half-buried news clipping from 1948, about a collapsed coal shaft just outside Sycamore Ridge. 17 miners had died. Only one man survived, a man named Alexander R. Walker. The same last name. She read further. That survivor later claimed a voice in the dark had told him where to go to survive the collapse. He had dreams afterward, visions of a black spire underground. He went mad within 6 months. Institutionalized. Died whispering nonsense about keys and children in sacrifice. Her blood ran cold. The town had forgotten the past. But something remembered. The next day, Alex didn't come to school. Instead, room 3B sat completely empty. Even Justine didn't show. Because at 2:17 a.m. that morning, the third child returned. Only this one was different. She was dead. They found Nia Wells floating in the reservoir just outside Sycamore Ridge. She was face up, arms outstretched like wings, mouth wide open, the way Leah had been found days earlier, but her body was still. Cold. Lifeless. The water around her was dark, almost thickened, like it had been turned to ink. The medical examiner who pulled her out later described it as, the worst thing I've ever touched. Not because of the water, but because of her. Nia's skin was pale blue. Her body had no visible wounds. No water in the lungs. But her eyes had disappeared. 2 perfect voids where they once were. And carved into her tongue, in some crude, spidery language no one could translate, were 5 unearthly symbols, each one slightly different, but spiraling around a common core. That core looked like a tower. Justine sat in the hospital parking lot again, watching as the black body bag was zipped over Nia's tiny corpse. Reporters were already circling, drones flying overhead. The town had changed. No longer just frightened, it was on the brink of collapse. News vans, protesters, self-proclaimed prophets and demonologists had flooded into Sycamore Ridge. Some said it was a satanic cult. Others whispered about government experiments. But Justine knew better. This wasn't human. This was something older. Something patient. Something that had waited decades. Her hands trembled as she looked at the folder in her lap, clippings, journal pages, historical articles, and her own frantic notes scrawled in red pen. Every path pointed to the tower. It wasn't a building. It wasn't made of stone or steel. It was an idea. A symbol. A place between places. A structure made of memory and sacrifice and suffering. And somehow, the missing children, the 17, had been taken there. Or had willingly gone. Back at home, Justine poured herself a glass of wine with shaking hands. Her house was silent except for the ticking of the old grandfather clock near the stairs. The power had flickered earlier that day, just like it always did before something happened. And she felt it now. That crawling sensation in her skin. Like the air itself had eyes. Her hallway was dark. She hadn't turned off those lights. As she stepped forward, she saw something drawn on the floor in chalk. It hadn't been there before. A spiral. With 17 hash marks around it. 16 straight lines, and one crooked, bent, like it was being twisted. And in the center, a name. Alex. At 2:17 a.m., she didn't sleep. She stood at her kitchen window, watching the street. Everything was silent. No wind. No cars. Not even insects. Then, her lights flickered. 3 knocks at her back door. She turned and stared. The knocks came again. Not pounding. Just, methodical. She crept to the door and put her hand on the knob. "Don't," she whispered to herself. But she was already turning it. She opened the door. And saw nothing. Just her empty backyard, lit silver by moonlight. But when she looked down, she saw it. A child's drawing. Fresh. Crayons on paper. A gate. 7 children walking through it, arms out. Eyes black. And behind them. Alex. Not as a boy. As something else. His face long. Mouth open too wide. Arms bent backwards. And from his back, wings. Not angelic. Bone. Justine visited Denise Walker the next morning. She hadn't returned any of Justine's calls. The blinds were drawn, the house locked tight. Justine knocked softly. Denise opened the door a crack. Her eyes were red, her face pale. "I can't talk long," she whispered. "He doesn't like when I do." Justine leaned in. "Is he still changing?" Denise nodded slowly. "I caught him writing in a language I've never seen. He speaks in his sleep. Names I've never heard. And there's something else." She opened the door wider. "He doesn't cast a shadow anymore." Justine blinked. "What?" "When the sun hits him, there's no shadow." Justine pushed past her and walked down the hallway. "Where is he?" Denise pointed to the basement door. "Down there. He doesn't like his room anymore." The air shifted as Justine approached the basement. It was freezing. She opened the door. Darkness. And a voice from below. "Miss Gandy." Her breath hitched. "I've been waiting." She descended the stairs slowly. Alex sat cross-legged in the corner, surrounded by dozens of drawings, each more twisted than the last. The tower. The gate. The missing children. Black skies with blood-colored moons. His eyes glowed faintly in the dimness. "You've been watching," he said. "Yes." "Good. He says you're ready." "Who?" "The one under the roots." Justine stared. "The Whisper Man?" Alex giggled. "He's not a man." "Not really." "Not anymore." Justine knelt beside him, trembling. "What is the tower, Alex?" He leaned in and whispered. It's where memory rots. Where forgotten things become real again. Where the world can be rewritten. She stared at him. And he smiled wide. Would you like to see it? That night, Justine dreamed of Nia. But it wasn't Nia as she remembered. It was Nia standing at the edge of a black field. Her mouth still open. Her eyes still gone. Her voice echoed in Justine's head. We were the first. He's almost finished. You'll see the gate soon. Justine woke screaming. Blood on her pillow. Not from her mouth. From her ears. 2 more children returned the next day. Emily Sung and Thomas Greer. Both alive. Both silent. Both brought to the hospital by strangers who claimed to have found them walking in the middle of the highway, arms out, eyes wide, bare feet sliced from the gravel. Emily wouldn't speak. But Thomas kept whispering the same phrase. The sky cracked. The tower breathes. We're the keys. He is the door. Back in her classroom, Justine sat at her desk, surrounded by 17 empty chairs. She laid out every drawing. Every journal page. Every note. A constellation of madness forming a larger picture she still couldn't understand. But she knew one thing. It wasn't over. She heard footsteps behind her. She turned. And saw Alex. Not how he looked now. How he looked in the drawings. Wings sprouting from his back. Hollow eyes. A smile stretched into infinity. He didn't speak. But in her mind, she heard. You've seen the gate. You're next. The final one will come through soon. Then he was gone. Like a flicker in her peripheral vision. A breath of cold air. An echo of something ancient. The town began to fall apart. People fled. Those who stayed nailed their windows shut. Set up altars. Slept in churches. Locked their children in rooms at night. But it didn't matter. Because at 2:17 a.m., it always came. The knocking. The whispers. The slow, inevitable pulling of something across the veil. In the forest just outside town, where the coal shaft had collapsed in 1948, something began to rise from the ground. Black stone. Covered in markings. Growing. Breathing. The tower. The forest behind Sycamore Ridge had never felt quite right. Even before the children vanished. Before the nightmares. Before the tower began to rise. There were always stories, tales whispered by older kids about something moving between the trees. Something with too many eyes. A wrongness that made birds fly around it and deer freeze mid-step. But now, it wasn't stories anymore. Now the trees leaned toward one another like they were listening. Watching. Waiting. And something was growing beneath them. Justine Gandy stood at the tree line, staring into the thick green. The light barely reached past the first few feet. Shadows stretched unnaturally long, even though the sun sat directly overhead. She wasn't sure why she'd come. Only that she had to. Something was calling. Not in words. In memories. She stepped forward. The woods swallowed her whole. Earlier that morning, she'd sat across from Emily Sung at Sycamore Memorial. The child sat upright in bed, motionless, staring at the ceiling. She hadn't blinked in hours. Her parents had been sent home for rest after collapsing from exhaustion. Justine leaned in and whispered, "Emily. It's Miss Gandy. I need to understand." Emily blinked. Once. Slowly, her lips began to move, though no sound came out. Justine leaned closer. Then, the whisper reached her. "The forest remembers who it lost." Justine froze. "What did you say?" Emily's voice was dry, papery. It didn't sound like her. "He's still growing." He needs more. Alex will open the door. He was born for it. Justine shook. Where is the door, Emily? Emily smiled faintly. Where the roots rot. Then she closed her eyes and didn't speak again. Now, hours later, Justine was in the woods. And the ground felt wrong. It pulsed. She pressed forward, the trees thickening around her like ribs of a monstrous beast. Branches tugged at her sleeves. Distant whispers drifted between the leaves. The wind didn't blow, but the forest breathed. She checked her phone. No service. Of course. Still, she continued. Then she saw the markings. Symbols carved into trees in wide spirals. The same ones the children had drawn. Eyes. The tower. The gate. Each carving wept black sap, and as she passed by, she swore she could hear each tree whisper her name. Justine. Teacher. He's waiting. Meanwhile, in town, chaos erupted. 5 more children returned. Their families found them curled up outside their homes, whispering in strange tongues, eyes milk-white, hands clutching wet soil. Each child repeated the same phrase. The gate is open. He walks beneath the skin. We are not alone anymore. The mayor called for a state of emergency. The police department fractured. Half the town fled. The other half barricaded their doors and prayed to gods they hadn't spoken to in decades. But it didn't matter. Because the gate wasn't coming. It was already here. Back in the woods, Justine reached a clearing. And stopped. The ground had split open in the center like a wound. Roots jutted up from the soil like bones, twisted and blackened. And in the center of the pit stood Alex. But not the Alex she remembered. He was taller now. Thinner. His limbs too long. His face too symmetrical. His mouth hung in a small, permanent smile. Behind him, something was growing from the dirt, something massive, jagged, and unnatural. The tower. Not fully built. Not yet. But it breathed. It pulsed like a living thing. As if it had veins beneath the bark like stone. Its surface was covered in eyes, blinking, twitching, some crying black tears. Justine stepped closer, trembling. Alex. He turned slowly. Miss Gandy, he said with unnatural calm. You came. What is this? He gestured to the tower behind him. This is memory made real. Pain carved in stone. They tried to bury him. Forget him. But memory always fights back. Justine's breath shook. Who? The Whisper Man. A gust of wind howled through the trees, even though none of them moved. Alex continued, he was once a god. A guardian. But people stopped believing. They buried him beneath this town. Starved him of names. He needed stories. Blood. And children remember best. Justine's voice cracked. You're not Alex anymore. He smiled wider. I am his voice now. Then he stepped aside. And she saw it. A hole. A door at the base of the tower. Carved from black bone. It was open. And from within came a sound that should not exist. Like whispering made of meat. Like breath made of knives. Justine stepped back, heart pounding. I can't stop this, she said. No, Alex replied, turning back to face the tower. But you can go with them. She saw now, around the edges of the pit, the 17. All the missing children. All standing still. Arms out like wings. Faces blank. Their eyes leaking black tears. Come with us, Miss Gandy, Alex said softly. Come see what they've built in the dark. Justine turned and ran. She didn't remember getting back to her car. She only remembered the smell of the forest, the rot, the iron, the whispering bark. And she remembered the tower watching her. That night, she locked every door in her house. Covered every mirror. Burned the drawings. But at 2:17 a.m., her lights flickered. And a voice rose from every vent, every wall, every pipe. You've seen it now. You're part of the story. The tower needs a teacher. The next morning, Alex didn't go home. His mother was gone. Her bed undisturbed. But on her bedroom ceiling, scrawled in ash, were the same 5 symbols from Nia's tongue. And in her closet, dozens of teeth. Tiny. Child-sized. Perfectly arranged in a spiral. Justine called the sheriff. But no one answered. She drove to the station. It was empty. Blood smeared on the floor. Radios hissing static. Phones off the hook. No signs of a struggle, just absence. The town was dying. Piece by piece. The gate had opened. And memory was no longer safe. By nightfall, only 12 children remained unreturned. But the returned had changed. They didn't eat. Didn't sleep. They moved in sync. Spoke in riddles. Watched people through windows. One family tried to leave town. Their car crashed 5 miles out, driver blind from sudden hemorrhaging. All 4 family members vanished. Only their baby was found, left on the road, smiling. Justine stood in her classroom one last time. Room 3B. 17 desks. 1 empty. But now, Alex's seat was full again. He sat there smiling. Waiting. I want to show you something, he said gently. He placed a sheet of paper on her desk. A drawing. Of her. Standing before the tower. Arms out. Eyes black. Mouth wide. Behind her, children with wings. And something enormous crawling out of the sky, mouth first, teeth like cathedral spires. I don't want this, she whispered. Alex smiled. It doesn't matter what you want anymore. The wind howled through the empty parking lot of Maple Hollow Elementary, scattering brittle leaves like forgotten whispers. The sky had turned a deep bruise purple, as though mourning the unnatural silence that hung over the school. It had been closed since the disappearances, windows boarded, playground rusting in silence. But tonight, Justine Gandy returned, flashlight in hand, with Alex close behind her. I don't want to go back in there, Alex whispered, voice trembling. Justine knelt beside him. You were spared for a reason, Alex. I don't think it was an accident. I think the answers are inside that building. He looked up at her, eyes wide. What if they're still in there? Then we find them. The side door gave way with a shuddering creak. The air inside was stale, heavy with mildew and dust, like a tomb sealed long ago. Their footsteps echoed unnaturally loud in the hallway, where children's crayon drawings still clung to the walls like warnings rather than decoration. They moved quickly, Alex gripping Justine's coat tightly. They reached classroom 3B. The door was slightly ajar. Everything inside was just as they had left it the day after the disappearances. 17 empty desks. 17 unopened textbooks. 17 neatly arranged chairs that had not been touched since the morning the children vanished. And one desk that belonged to Alex, disheveled, forgotten, stained with drawings of things he refused to explain. Justine moved toward the back of the classroom where an old rug lay beneath the reading nook. She had returned here once, alone, weeks ago, chasing a fleeting instinct, and had found a soft echo beneath her feet. Now, together, they pulled the rug away. Beneath it, embedded in the linoleum, was a trapdoor, its edges so perfectly aligned it was nearly invisible. Rusted hinges groaned as she pried it open. Cold air wafted up from the darkness below, thick with earth and something else, something sour, metallic, ancient. "Stay behind me," she whispered. They descended a narrow ladder, flashlight beam flickering. The tunnel below wasn't part of any school blueprint. Carved from stone and soil, its walls were jagged, roots dangling like veins. Symbols were etched everywhere, crude spirals, interlocking eyes, children drawn with limbs too long and mouths sewn shut. The air grew colder as they pressed forward. The tunnel opened into a large, circular chamber lit by faint blue bioluminescence seeping from the walls. There were tiny handprints smeared in the glowing substance, small and desperate. In the center of the chamber stood a stone altar, surrounded by remnants of 17 school uniforms, torn, stained, folded as if ceremoniously placed. Alex covered his mouth, eyes watering. "These are theirs." Justine stepped forward, scanning the chamber. The altar bore markings matching those in Alex's drawings. She reached into her bag and pulled out one of his sketches. A figure with hollow eyes, antlers, and a stitched smile. It was carved into the stone above the altar. Freshly. Then came a sound. A wet, dragging sound from one of the tunnels. Something breathing, shallow and wet. Justine grabbed Alex's arm and backed toward the ladder, but the tunnel behind them had vanished. The earth had shifted. Whispers began to echo, faint, childlike, singing a song no one should ever know. "Ring around the altar. 17 shall kneel. Eyes sewn shut and silence bound. The beast shall make them reel." Justine turned. The walls began to pulse. Out from one of the tunnels crawled a shape, large, misshapen, crawling on too many limbs. It moved like a spider and breathed like a dying animal. But the worst part was its face. It had many. 17 to be exact. And each one was a distorted mask of a child from her class, mouths twitching, eyes moving independently, faces whispering nonsense and sobbing all at once. Alex screamed. Justine shoved him behind her. "Run!" There was no way back, but to the left was a crack in the wall, narrow, possibly too narrow. They ran. The creature shrieked behind them, a horrible sound like children laughing inside a meat grinder. The tunnel narrowed, forcing them to crawl. The whispers grew louder, now inside their heads. One was spared, one must stay. Justine turned to Alex. His nose was bleeding. His eyes were rolling back. "No," she shouted, grabbing him. "You are not taking him." Light. A thin sliver. They emerged through a hidden door behind the boiler room. She slammed it shut, heart thundering. Alex collapsed, unconscious. Justine held him tight and wept. They had found the truth. But something had found them too. Something that was not yet done. The bell at Maple Hollow Elementary had not rung in weeks. It was rusted now, like everything else in town, quietly decaying under the weight of a grief no one could shake, like mold spreading across the soul of a community. But as the sun bled over the horizon on that 7th week, casting long shadows down the empty hallways, a sound echoed through the school. Clang. It was the bell. Justine Gandy awoke in a panic, heart galloping in her chest. She looked over at Alex, who was still asleep, curled up on her couch like a wounded animal. They hadn't returned to his house. It didn't feel safe. Nothing did anymore. She hadn't told anyone about the underground chamber. Not the altar. Not the 17 uniforms. Not the creature that bore the children's faces. No one would have believed her. And now the bell had rung. Justine crept over to the window. Her breath hitched. Outside, every street lamp was flickering in unison. A rhythm. A heartbeat. And on the sidewalk, 17 small figures. Standing in a line. Motionless. Each in their pajamas, barefoot, arms at their sides, heads tilted just slightly in that disturbing, unnatural way that screamed of something other. Alex stirred. He sat up, rubbing his eyes. "They're here," he said before she could speak. "They came for me." The school had become something else overnight. When Justine and Alex approached it, through streets emptied by fear, houses sealed tight with curtains drawn, they saw the sky above the school twist, spiral, pulse. The air smelled metallic. The playground had rusted to nothing, as if decades had passed. The front doors were wide open. And from the hallway came a song. 17 voices in harmony. The bell has rung, the clock is dead. The time has come to bow your head. The hollowed ones must take their seat. The final child shall make them complete. Justine held Alex's hand tightly. His fingers were freezing. He didn't speak. As they walked through the school, the lights flickered above, stuttering in time with their steps. The walls bled faint shadows of children skipping and running. Giggles echoed from lockers that creaked open and shut on their own. The trophy case held no trophies now, only teeth, arranged in perfect spirals. They reached classroom 3B. 17 children sat at their desks. Eyes closed. Smiling. Their skin was grayish, waxy. Some twitched. Some whispered. The classroom was cold, but it wasn't just temperature, it was like the absence of warmth, the total void of life. At the front of the class stood the thing that had once been human. The principal, maybe. Or a substitute. Now it was tall, draped in something like robes of black mold, its face featureless except for a long, vertical mouth that didn't move when it spoke. It spoke into their heads. "Welcome back, Miss Gandy. Take your place." Justine didn't move. Alex began to tremble beside her. "You brought him here," the voice said. "You did well. He has returned." "No," Justine whispered. "I didn't bring him here for you." The room pulsed. The children opened their eyes. They were empty, not blind, just absent, like the souls had been vacuumed out and replaced with something alien. "He is the missing piece. He was meant to join us." Alex's lip quivered. "Why me?" "You were spared," the voice said, "because you were always last. Always watching. Always listening. You heard us before anyone else. You knew. You were chosen. I don't want to be chosen." The figure at the front of the room twitched. Its long fingers extended, and the children began to rise from their seats, moving in perfect, synchronized motion, like puppets on strings. They walked forward, surrounding Justine and Alex in a circle. "Alex," Justine whispered. "Look at me." He did. Tears ran down his cheeks. "We have to break the pattern. They need you to complete the circle. If you don't play along, if you resist, it can't work. I'm scared. So am I. But you're stronger than you know." The children reached out, arms stiff. Their mouths opened, not to speak, but to scream. A single, deafening wail erupted from 17 throats, so sharp and high it shattered the glass in the windows. Justine dropped to her knees, clutching her ears. Alex stood frozen, eyes wide in terror. The lights exploded. The black-robed figure howled, not in pain, but in hunger. "Join us." Justine crawled to her desk, her old desk, and reached under it. She'd hidden something here weeks ago. A lighter. And a bottle of cleaning alcohol. She flicked the lighter. "You want him," she screamed. "Then burn with him." She hurled the bottle toward the altar-shaped teacher's desk and lit the flame. Fire erupted instantly, hungry, orange, roaring. The room screamed with it. Children twisted, contorted, began to melt and shriek. Their bodies didn't burn like flesh, they bled shadow. The robed figure lunged at her, but Alex moved. He stepped in front of her. And he spoke. I was not yours to begin with. You're not real. You're just a dream someone forgot to wake up from. The thing stopped. It twitched, spasmed. And cracked. Like porcelain under heat. Alex raised both arms. The children collapsed. The room imploded in on itself. When Justine opened her eyes, she was lying in the grass outside the school. It was morning. Birds were chirping. The sun was warm. She sat up slowly. The school was gone. Not burned down, gone. As if it had never existed. The land was empty, save for tufts of wild grass and the broken sidewalk leading nowhere. She looked around. Alex? No answer. She stood, spinning in place. Alex. Silence. No birds anymore. No wind. Just the endless blue sky and her own heartbeat. Then, behind her, footsteps. She turned. A boy stood there. Taller now. Older. Eyes calm. Alex? He nodded. She ran to him, wrapped her arms around him. He didn't hug her back. Instead, he whispered. It's not over. It never ends. It just resets. She pulled back. What do you mean? He smiled, sadly. Softly. I was the last. But now it's someone else's turn. Alex, I don't understand. But then she did. Because across the field, where the school once stood, a new building shimmered into view. Modern. Glassy. Clean. A banner flapped in the breeze. Welcome to Maple Hollow Elementary, grand reopening. Children were walking toward it. 17 of them. Followed by a new teacher. Justine gasped. The teacher turned. It wasn't her. It was someone else. But she recognized the face. Vaguely. She'd seen her in the mirror once. Years ago. The wind picked up. Alex faded into shadow, his smile still there. Justine stumbled backward. The sky darkened. The bell rang again. Clang. 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 And the cycle began anew.